I loved what Sam Altman said recently, which was, and it was before he launched 4.0, but he's like, the current LM you're using will be the most dumb LM you will ever use in your entire life.
Welcome to Sidecar Sync, your weekly dose of innovation. If you're looking for the latest news, insights, and developments in the association world, especially those driven by artificial intelligence, you're in the right place. We cut through the noise to bring you the most relevant updates with a keen focus on how AI and other emerging technologies are shaping the future. No fluff, just facts and informed discussions. I'm Amith Nagarajan, chairman of Blue Cypress, and I'm your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Sidecar Sync. My name is Mallory Macaitis, and I'm one of your co-hosts along with Amith Nagarajan, and I run Sidecar. Today, we have an interview lined up for you with Bill Macaitis. Bill is an advisor and board member guiding aspiring unicorns and decacorns. He works with companies to build out capital-efficient go-to-market strategies and world-class teams. Over his 20-year career, Bill has achieved 5 successful exits and powered growth at 3 of the fastest ever growing companies. Slack, where he worked as CRO and CMO, Zendesk, where he worked as CMO, and Salesforce, where he was SVP of marketing. We have a great conversation lined up for you today, where we explore the idea of more pain equaling more opportunity. We, of course, talk about product-led growth, or PLG, and how it can apply to associations. We cover freemium models and the pricing strategy behind them. And of course, when you have someone like Bill on the podcast, we talked about marketing AI use cases as well. Stay tuned for an exciting conversation after a quick word from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is Sidecar's AI Learning Hub. The AI Learning Hub is your go-to place to sharpen your AI skills and ensure you're keeping up with the latest in the AI space. When you purchase access to the AI Learning Hub, you get a library of on-demand AI lessons that are regularly updated to reflect what's new and the latest in the AI space. You also get access to live weekly office hours with AI experts. And finally, you get to join a community of fellow AI enthusiasts who are just as excited about learning about this emerging technology as you are. You can purchase 12-month access to the AI Learning Hub for $399. And if you want to get more information on that, you can go to sidecarglobal.com/hub. Bill, thank you so much for joining us on the Sidecar Sync podcast. You have quite the professional history: Slack, Zendesk, Salesforce. Can you talk a little bit about your journey with marketing and technology?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, Mallory. Thanks for having me, Amith. Great to be here. And, I've just been one of those people that always loved business. I always loved marketing. I was the nerd in 6th grade in the back that was reading Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Fortune. So I've always had a huge passion for this. I did entrepreneurship club like in high school and have always loved doing it. I did a startup right out of college and it was on the B2C side. We grew and sold that. We had a couple more exits on the B2C side. And then most recently, as you said, like on the B2B side with Salesforce, Zendesk, and Slack. So it's been an honor. I've always loved online marketing. I've always loved, more innovative go-to-market models with SaaS and AI. So I was super excited when you guys reached out to talk today.
I'm impressed. I was not reading Wall Street Journal in middle school. I don't know about you and me, but I was not. So very impressive.
I was right there with Bill doing that, and yeah, it's
I look at you both group. Now.
and Bill, it's great to see you. It's been a while. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh yeah, no, great pleasure.
I heard on another podcast you did something you said where there's more pain, there's more opportunity. And I really liked that. I was wondering if you could share some examples of how this mantra has held true in your life.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, I work with a lot of different VCs and everyone has their investment theses and everyone has different ways of how they allocate capital. And for me, I just always said like, hey, where there's pain, there's opportunity. Right? Like if you can find a space that has a ton of pain in it, there's a huge opportunity to build a business there. And sometimes it's as simple as that, right? Like the daily occurrences we go through, where is there pain? Where is there friction? Ironically, a lot of times I find with these startups, like these older spaces, these older industries have the most pain in them because maybe they're not sexy. Like I majored in business, but I actually had a minor or a focus on supply chain management. And supply chain management for a lot of people is really boring. It's logistics, it's manufacturing, it's warehousing. It's not really sexy stuff that doesn't get like the sexy investment money, but there's so much money that goes through that engine, and there's tons of opportunity there to make a lot of money and to help these customers out and reduce that pain. So I think for me personally, whenever I evaluated if I'm going to move forward with a company and help them out either as an advisor or as a full-time role, I always looked at pain. And so Slack was a really good example. Like I couldn't find anyone that I knew that really liked using email, that were like, I love email and it works great for team communication and it's the best, right? It was usually just people bitching about it. And so I'm like, oh, there's a lot of pain there, right? And so, for me, that's been a cool kind of guiding compass that's helped me out.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's so incredibly relevant for our audience, the association community, both because of the pain points they are so attuned into in their markets, whether they serve doctors or lawyers or engineers or architects or whatever the association is focused on. They know that domain really well, and they kind of feel the pain, they see the pain, they know the pain, and there's opportunity abundant in that pain. I love that framing. And I think, your example with Slack makes a ton of sense. If there's an inefficiency or something that's just troubling a lot of people. And associations all over, a lot of times they're thinking about like, oh, well, how do you just keep up with doing what you currently do?
Yeah.
We try to encourage them to think about the products, services, and opportunities that need to exist in order to solve for the future pain. With the curve of AI being as aggressive as it is, all those professions, all those industries are going to change rapidly. And there's new opportunities. There will be new pains, and there will also be opportunities to solve for pains that were previously unsolvable because of these technologies.
Absolutely. And I think too, having a customer-centric mindset is really helpful, right? I mean, a lot of times we look at the pain from our side, right? Like the business side, like where are we having pain? But I really always like to think about just, what is the pain that the average person's having? Your user, your customer, right? A lot of times those pain points are like a pebble in a shoe, right? Like the first time there's a little pebble there, it's a little annoying, but if you have that pebble and you experience it every single day in your shoe, it gets really frustrating really quickly. So, I always just try to put myself in the other person's shoes and kind of understand where they have pain, and where there's pain, there's opportunity, right? And if you don't solve that pain, someone else usually will come around and do it for you.
Bill, I would call you, maybe you would call yourself this as well, a master of product-led growth, especially with all your history at those companies I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. But I think it would be helpful for our listeners to go back to the basics. How do you define product-led growth?
Yeah, I'm definitely a nerd with PLG. I have two favorite acronyms in my life. NPS, which is Net Promoter Score, which is a very customer-centric metric, and PLG, which is product-led growth. If I had tattoos, I would get those two, which is how much of a nerd I am on those. So PLG, or product-led growth, you'll hear a lot of different definitions. For me, what it really means is that people are spending more and more of their time in the actual software or app or product that you have. And you need to infuse your marketing into the product, your sales into the product, your success into the product, your support into the product. There are some people like you'll have your software, your tool. And again, that's kind of my background, is like software and apps and stuff like that. And some people go like, oh, they'll create all this amazing stuff, but they'll put it all on their website or their blog. And we like to think everyone's going there, but we know like 3 or 5% of your people are going there, right? But how do you like infuse all that good marketing into the product, right? And not only that, but how do you make it a better experience within there? So, when I say like, put your sales into product, that might be, hey, you have a high velocity motion, right? Where people can buy stuff on their own, right? When you put your success into the product, you might have a proactive chat that pops up and goes, hey, when someone's using your software for the first time, someone actually says, hey, I'm Mallory. How can I help you out? Like get this started and get it going, right? Versus, the old way, which is very reactive, which was, hey, you would wait until someone had a problem, then they'd have to leave your app or your software, go to your website, find the contact us, find the support link, find the email link, send a request, wait 3 weeks, get a response, go back into it. Such like a terrible experience there. The other big tendency you have in PLG is you want to have a fun product, a simple product, right? And so you spend a lot of cycles on that. And that's where, like, when you say put your marketing into the product, a lot of times you go to the website and it's beautiful. It's got like mascots and all these colors and it's fun tone. And then you go into the product itself, the software, and everything's like, that's all gone. It's all like white background, black text. Everything is next except cancel. It's like, whoa, where did all the fun go, right? And what I found is when you can make a product that is fun and simple to use, people tend to talk about it more. People tend to recommend it more. So as an anecdote, like Slack, our number one integration for as long as I was there was not HubSpot or Marketo or all these business applications. It was Giphy. Right? Everyone wanted to tie an automatic Giphy in so you could just do /Giphy and put a fun little, image in there. People want to have fun with it. And so product-led growth is all about how do you infuse your marketing into the product? Unique visual identity, tone and voice. How do you infuse your sales into the product? High velocity. How do you infuse your support and success into the product? How do you make your product simple, more fun? And it's very antithetical to how most companies build their products because most of them just add feature after feature after feature. It becomes the more features you add, the harder it is to use, the less fun it is to use. You can't buy it in the product. You have to talk to a salesperson. It's hard to use, so you have to go to a customer success person. It's just a different way of kind of building more modern AI and SaaS tools.
That's super helpful. And I love the description and the example in Slack. I certainly experienced that myself. And I think it's fun. It also adds utility fundamentally to the modality of communication people can have in a product like that, where you can really express yourself in ways that you probably wouldn't in a business setting without it. So it kind of adds richness to the experience beyond just the enjoyment. It's I think, a really powerful modality. And I think associations generally, I would say, it's a generalization, but tend to be a little bit on the dry side with the way they deliver content. So if you're in a profession, let's say like you're an association of surgeons or an association of accountants, do you have any tips on how you might approach still maintaining the seriousness of the domain, but maybe finding creative ways to inject something in kind of that fun realm? I think there's probably lots of ways to do that, but I'd love to hear your reaction to that question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, I've been a part of associations and I tend to agree that the content tends to be a little bit dry, right? And everything tends to be super, super, a little rigid, if you will. So I'd probably say like, hey, if you kind of believe in the product-led growth, style, you're going to use some different metrics, right? So two really big metrics we used at Slack was daily active users. So that is literally just how many people come to your software every day. In this case, how many people are coming to your association, maybe the website, the resources you have, how many are coming every day, right? The other metric we used was Net Promoter Score. So I mentioned that earlier, NPS. Simple question, how likely are you to recommend to a friend or colleague? Scale of 1 to 10. It's a cool metric because so many companies use it that it's super benchmarkable. Right? You can just see pretty instantly, like, are they getting value out of your service, right? Would they recommend it to someone else? When you start tracking those two metrics, you start taking different strategies, right? Because, to your question, like, how do you make it a little more fun? Well, when you have a fun product or a fun service or a fun association, people tend to come more often, right? They tend to visit you more. When people visit you more and they like you more, in general, I found all the substream revenue metrics tend to work out better. They tend to pay more for you. They tend to renew more. They tend to attrit less. So I think like when you can create a valuable service that people are coming back more often, that they really like, that they're recommending, all your other metrics tend to do very well. And that's those are good input metrics. I think like a lot of times revenue metrics are output metrics. You have to improve the input metrics to get the output metrics to improve. And so I think there's lots of easy ways to, make your product more fun. Even the association, like one way is like, hey, find a lot of times like the websites or are built by the backend developers, and like have someone that's good at copy, or that's just who's the funniest person right? And have them rewrite your onboarding dialogue, right? Like in the actual website or in the email threads. Maybe infuse some color, some palettes into that association website. Maybe have some more real authentic conversations, or just think about like the content that get with people that they would enjoy more, right? That maybe they're going to laugh a little bit. I think those are all easy ways to kind of get some big wins there.
Well, I think one small idea might get bigger opportunities and bigger ideas. And building on what you just said, you might have a very serious piece of content, but the way you frame it and the way you navigate people to it, the way you kind of help them approach that content could perhaps take a little bit lighter tone, a different style. One of the big opportunities I think that's out there with artificial intelligence and this type of interaction is this degree of personalization that we can approach individuals with, where you might actually adjust the tone that you engage with a particular person, and say in an environment like a learning management system, let's say, where an association is delivering professional education. Perhaps if I know I'm talking to Bill and he's a fun guy, he likes a lot of humor and he likes a lot of color, I can perhaps still stay on brand, but within certain, kind of characteristics, give Bill a little bit different experience than perhaps somebody else who's very serious and different personality style. And of course, AI, trades in this. Exactly what AI is so good at now. Another aspect that I'd love to get your feedback on that I think is incredibly interesting from a marketing perspective and also PLG within the environment of a product is storytelling. We know that kind of the emotional bond we form with narratives, with stories, when done well, is incredibly strong, and the retention we have is so much higher than just kind of the dry dissertation of facts and figures. Yet we don't do that in business communications. We don't tell stories a lot. And once again, we have with language models, particularly as they continue to relentlessly improve, opportunities to potentially do a form of translation. When we talk about translation, people immediately, their brain goes to like English to Spanish, which is amazing. That's unbelievably exciting. Well, what about translating a piece of content into a vibrant story? And then delivering that story and seeing who can deliver the same educational insights, but through storytelling. What's your reaction to that kind of approach? I'm just curious.
I love it. And I feel like there's so much opportunity now. If you are anywhere near, if you're an association and you're dealing with content, like AI is one of the most singular, powerful drivers of your future success. There are so many use cases and you guys know where you can leverage AI. And I think a huge part of that not as many people tap into is the tone and voice. And I think it's actually great news because not everybody's just like this phenomenal writer or phenomenal storyteller, right? But if you have kind of the existing content, maybe you have that white paper, maybe you have that data research paper, right? And you can pull out these compelling stories, these compelling customer use cases and give them emotion behind it, right? And you can change those tones to what is relevant for your audience, right? And maybe it's even at a one-to-one personalization level. The capabilities are just incredible. And 4.0 and Gemini, and there's so much new advances. And I loved what Sam Altman said recently, which was, I think it was before he launched 4.0, but he's like, the current LM you're using will be the most dumb LM you will ever use in your entire life, right? So, and that's like, it's pretty good right now, right? So, yeah, there's so much opportunity there. And I love the personalization. I love the tone. I love the refactoring of existing content. There's tons and tons of opportunities for associations right now.
One of the related opportunities we think about is kind of thinking about market adjacency. So we think about like, I'm an association for CPAs. And so that's a pretty narrow audience in a sense, because the number of people that are in, say, the accounting profession at large is far greater than the number of people who have the CPA designation. And then, of course, beyond accountants, people who are in kind of the financial office in other roles, they're not accountants, but they're related to it. And you think about the amount of content a CPA society might have that could be relevant to the broader audience. Going right back to what you just said, there's opportunities for repurposing, refactoring, different kinds of storytelling. And a lot of associations kind of stay in their lane. They think of it from the viewpoint of like, who are their traditional members and what have they wanted? I think there's opportunities to do what you're saying and potentially considering these adjacencies.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great adjacent markets. I'm always surprised with these associations. I know I'm part of several, and it's like I mentioned a lot of other things too that maybe go just a little bit outside of that edge, and I don't think you need to be as rigid with it. I think a lot of times too, I'm a big believer customer centric, and part of that is like you bring to life the stories of your customers, right? Like when you hear from your actual users or people that are part of the associations, and you can help bring those stories to life. A lot of times they're so much more powerful than just a data sheet or, a white paper or something like very technical with just tons of stats. Like people remember stories, and It's amazing when people bond with those stories. They create relationships, and again, they're much more of an advocate for you. They go to bat for you. So, I think it's critical for an association to think about that.
I'm big on the stories. I will say that just as my 2 cents. Bill, when talking about associations, you're a member of some, you know that we're talking about membership models a lot of the time. And so when defining product-led growth, you mentioned infusing marketing, sales, and success into the product. But can you help contextualize how you could use those same strategies with a membership, for example?
Yeah. So I've done memberships pretty much for 30 years now, online memberships, right? Like my first startup out of college, we had a 3-tier subscription model. It was in the gaming space, but you could sign up for like, a gold membership or a platinum membership. And we started too high in the precious metals because then when we added a third one, we're like, what the heck what's better than platinum? So we're like diamond, right? But yeah, I think memberships are a really amazing way to build recurring revenue, right? That's a big part of like SaaS, the space I'm in, software as a service, is you have recurring revenue as part of a membership. And I think there is a huge art and science to how you price and package these things. So I tend to be a big believer in the freemium model. That's usually a key tenet of PLG is you want to get people into their product and start experiencing value before you force a purchase decision on them. And so what I find is a lot of companies, especially in ones that are more traditional industries or a little older school, have a really hard time with that. And a lot of time it's like, hey, you get all this stuff, but you have to pay us before you access any of that value. And historically, when I've seen companies go down that route, they have very low conversion rates, right? They'll usually get, usually free to paid is like 1% to 5%. Kind of industry average. But when you start to experiment with these pricing models and you start to open it up to have a little bit more of a free model, people start to experience a lot of value. And then you can think about what are your triggers to upgrade differently. So, for instance, a lot of people use features to differentiate their plans. On plan A, you get these 5 features. On plan B, you get the next 5 features. On plan C, premium, you get the next 5. Well, what a lot of companies a little more advanced are using thresholds. So what they'll do is they'll say, hey, we're going to offer a free plan. And by the way, it's not even a crippleware plan. It's not like you only get 2 features and you only get to use it for 3 days and then your access gets cut off. But they'll say, hey, you get a free plan. You get to access almost all of our features, but we're going to put some thresholds in, right? So for instance, for OpenAI, for instance, you could say, hey, you get to use once a day. You can go in and use it. But hey, if you want to use it more than once a day, maybe you need to go to this next plan here. Or for Slack, for instance, we said, hey, you get up to 5 integrations on the free plan. If you want to go beyond that, you need to upgrade. And so I think those concepts are really powerful because at the end of the day, so anyone that's an association, anyone that's marketing an association, you generally have a directive, right? You have to go out and get X amount of members. And usually it's like, we want to get more members, right? So how do you get those members, right? Okay, give me a marketing budget. I will use a lot of different media and essentially buy users to come into you. Well, when you kind of have a free model, what ends up happening is you end up having, it's like you're hiring these marketers on the free plan, right? So like Slack, we had like 1 million free users. I didn't look as we had 1 million free users. I looked as we had 1 million free marketers, right? That were out there talking about our plan, recommending it to other people, getting other people to sign up for it. And so, for me, it's a long way of saying like a free user a bad thing. It's actually like it's a marketing cost, if you will. And that marketing cost a lot of times is cheaper than the alternative forms of demand gen or paid media that you're out and find new members. And then also, if you layer in these more advanced strategies with thresholds and other things, you can get really much higher conversion rates because now people experience the value, they see it, and they're like, oh yeah, I get this. Oh yeah, I want to upgrade to the next plan because I want to have more unlimited access to all this, right? It's a very different sell than putting everything behind a gate, and you have to make this huge purchase decision right off the bat if you're going to move forward or not. So anyway, those are some kind of core concepts of PLG and how they could apply to more subscription model.
I think those are on the, pretty much bullseye for the association market. Back in 2017, I published a book called The Open Garden Organization, which was targeting exactly this topic. I was trying to encourage associations to reconsider their strategy to focus not so much in a defined customer group that they've oftentimes had 80-90% market share with already, but to think about the broader context of where they can provide utility and to do exactly what you're saying, to make some content available, to open the garden, to bring people in, to share some of those resources, which of course advances their purpose, since these are all not-for-profit, purpose-driven organizations, or almost all of them are.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that creates those opportunities for funnel activation, downstream, where you can offer higher value for higher investments. So, love the model. I think that one thing that I would say is, I think, kind of interesting for associations now to consider with that is there's a lot of concern about content that's freely available, not so much because of the economics, but because of the broader world and AI models being trained on them. So you put all this great content out there as a marketer. Maybe some of it's behind a paywall, you have to register, but it's still free with that style of freemium. Maybe some of it's just like traditionally SEO enabled content to bring people in. And the concern is that Google, with generative summaries or other search engines, don't even have to send the traffic your way. What are your thoughts on that? Just it's on topic, but a little bit to the side. I'm just curious how you feel about that.
Man, it's the $1 million question, right? That every content creator is thinking about, is worried about. Is my content just going to be put out there and essentially, trained for someone else that can use it? I know there's a part of me that's just like, if you're trying to hide your content, are you just, fighting gravity, right? Like, there's so much content out there. And I don't know, maybe you're the one that has this completely unique take on it that no one else has. But part of me is like, hey, you're just fighting it. Like, there's so much content they're going to get trained on. Another part of me is like, hey, maybe you can monetize that down the road, right? Like, some of these services are starting to go to individual companies and pay for their content to be trained. And obviously, we'll see how this settles on the legal side with like the New York Times and a bunch of other media companies. But there's recently announced deals with Reddit and some other services where they're trying to get their content. So, hey, maybe that's a future revenue stream for you. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, like, when I have these tough questions, I just kind of always go back to, all right, well, what would my customer like? What would my user like? What would my viewer like? Right. And if I can provide utility and value to them, then that's generally a good thing. Right. And so, I wouldn't let it completely drive you, to not, putting it out there, right, if you will. I just think at the end of the day, my guiding principles, what's best for our users, and can we make their lives better? Can we eliminate some pain? Can we provide some value? If it is, go for it.
That makes a lot of sense. I think lowering friction for the users, creating value, making it easier is super important. To the point you made earlier, associations do often have something quite unique. They typically, what I would go so far as to say, often have the best content in their field or their sub-profession in the world. And so they're protective of it on the one hand. The flip side of it is they tend to make it kind of hard for people to get to. Even their members who are paying, there's a lot of backflips that are being done to just navigate websites. And so I think it's an interesting balance. And once again, going back to the earlier part of this discussion, AI is really good at kind of transformations of content where you might have these deep, rich resources, and you just want to put a summary on your website that's public facing outside of the paywall. And, that would have normally taken hundreds of hours or thousands of hours and been not a scalable solution. But you can do that with AI, where you just publish the summaries or publish some component of the content.
I'm a huge believer in content marketing. So anyone that's part of an association that's creating content, like, hey, love you. I've been there, like Slack, Zendesk, Salesforce, I built up really large content teams. And I'm a huge believer of creating, great evergreen content and then reusing that and repurposing it, right? Even now, I was talking to Mallory, like I'm filming a bunch of content for an upcoming YouTube channel that I'm going to be doing. And I've got a lot of the long form content down, but now I'm chopping it all up into shorts, right? And, reusing it in different places there. And AI has been hugely helpful throughout that entire process, right? For me as a content creator. So yeah, like I would always tell my content teams, like, hey, focus less on quantity. This is not like, hey, we have to get a blog post per week. Think about more evergreen content, good, great, big evergreen content. And then how can you use it in as many channels as possible? How can you slice it up into different areas? Video is a huge part now too. You see like LinkedIn is launching kind of a video tab, right, within their mobile app, which is kind of new, and the explosion of all the different social channels. So I think in a great way, like all the associations out there, hey, you have really great and unique content. Now it's just a question of how do you leverage it? And I think AI is like a huge part of it. Can be a great asset to you to make that process, so much easier.
The other question I wanted to ask you is, when you think about your funnel strategy going from free to paid, a lot of associations, it's kind of like, going from hanging out at the Ahwahnee Hotel at the base of Yosemite Valley, enjoying a cocktail, to scaling the face of El Capitan, right? It's like a straight vertical leap to something very pleasurable and enjoyable to like, oh crap, I'm not going to do that, right? What about, some kind of a tripwire offer, something that's just a very small little purchase? I'll give you one example of what we do, because Sidecar effectively is like an association. We don't have members, but we have the concept of a very, very similar engagement. And we do a ton of free content. We actually have a free book on AI for associations we talk about a lot. We have this podcast. We have a free monthly webinar on AI for association leaders, and on and on and on. And then we have this $25 thing, which is this mini course we call our prompt engineering boot camp, or mini course, I think is what we call it right now. So, and the idea is we also have a $400 learning hub, which is a much bigger like investment in learning. And so what we're trying to do is get people to convert from one to the other to the next. What are your thoughts on some kind of a little bitty but paid offering that precedes membership, maybe, to get kind of people warmed up to the idea of spending money with the association?
Yeah, I love the idea of having, ladders, easy steps that you can make, right? Again, kind of getting back to PLG, it's all about friction, right? Like, how much friction are you putting? And that could be pricing friction, cognitive friction, adoption friction. The more steps, the more clicks, the bigger price jumps. Those are all just big friction moments, right? And what you tend to see with those is just very low conversions, right? So I think anytime you can create a smaller offering, that just gets someone in that dips their toes. Now, I would argue, hey, a lot of that you can do via freemium, right? And, create the right thresholds and upgrade drivers. But even having, some different plans, some easier plans, maybe some one-offs. A big part of, my business is, how do you cross-sell, cross-pollinate users that have expressed a little interest, right? So, hey, they've signed up for one thing, but now, okay, they've gotten some value on it. You've built up trust, and now you can cross-sell them, or expose them to everything else that you have, right? And sometimes, those little steps are a lot easier for these users to get into. So, yeah, I realize the old model was just, you go from nothing to 100, right? It's like you have this giant cliff and 0 to 100, and hey, you have to make that decision not based off much value, not based off a lot, right? You're just kind of making that big leap of faith. But I feel like there's better ways, and the software industry, I think, in a lot of ways, like, we all take inspiration from everywhere. Like, I take a lot of my inspiration from like B2C and gaming, right? Because I did a lot of that, right? And a lot of these, I think a lot of our personal lives, we probably at some point downloaded some game on our phone, right? And they have like really good freemium models. Like, they have where you sign up, and then, if you upgrade, you get these additional points, or you get this additional armor, or you get this additional like levels, and they're really good at like slowly working you up to more of a paid user. And I think we should be inspired by that. All types of industries that have gone through essentially the same kind of complex problem sets that we're going through. We can be inspired on their solutions.
You mentioned price jumps, which is, I think, an important piece to dive into. Sometimes when upgrading from one tier to the next, we can see really large price increases, maybe even 5x in terms of price per user. Yeah. Can you share any guidance on pricing strategy and how to approach that?
Yeah, I love those multiples. I've generally gone a 2x, 3x, 3x. So if you have multiple tiers, I like a free tier, and then a 2x from the first page, the second page, and then a 3x from the next one there. Am I getting that right? And then one more 3x. Essentially what I found, if you want to distill it down to just easy to understand language, is that your SMB market, so the people that are in SMBs are the most price sensitive, right? And they are ones that are like gonna fight you on a $1 increase in price, right? The further you up market, the least price sensitive they are, right? And so you can have much higher increases on the high end. So, when I would tend to look at it, again, I look through the world a lot in the NPS lens, so Net Promoter lens. And in that lens, you either have promoters or detractors, people that love you and are talking about you, or people that hate you and are saying, stay away from that like the plague. And so you want to build an army of promoters, right? And so generally you'll make your money on those higher tier plans, like the enterprises. That's where you tend to make your money. But you still want to have really affordable plans because you want to build an army of promoters, right? So the lower segments, generally, like we would always look at it as, hey, again, that was our marketing engine. So the free segment and the SMB segment, like the free plan and that first low price plan was your marketing engine. Think about the money you spend on marketing. Think of almost like, hey, that's, the bandwidth cost for those users, the support cost for users. That's a marketing write-off. And then as you go higher up in the plans, that's where you tend to make your money. The problem is if you just skip straight to the higher up, and by the way, I see this all the time. I currently serve as an advisor, board member for a lot of SaaS startups. The number one thing they come to me with is, Bill, we've got a great product. We sell only to the enterprise, but no one knows us, right? And I'm like, of course, you have like 75 customers. Now, maybe they're spending $1 million each, but you have there's only like 100 people in the world that actually use your product, right? And there's 7 million people in the world. So that's a 0.0000, right? But the companies that I've seen that have these lower price tiers tend to have just a lot more users. And again, users that normally wouldn't sign up for you because they're price sensitive. So if you have an intro price that is relatively, reasonable, you're going to have a lot of those users. And then all of a sudden, you get like this flywheel effect. The more users you have, the more people know about it, the more people that want to work with you, the more credible you are, right? It just starts rolling. You start to become the industry category leader for that particular space. So I think it is important. Like I do like multiple tiers, right? Where you're doing per user, UBP or usage-based pricing is a big thing in the software side as well. And that's essentially allowing you to have multiple tiers, right? You can just start small with a little bit of usage, and as you use more, you get you pay more. But those concepts are really important, right? Like I recommend have multiple tiers, have a free tier. That first tier should be just not that much at all, a little bit, and then you can pretty quickly scale up to those higher gold, platinum type tiers.
That's super helpful. I remember the conversations we had with you, Bill, back in the days of when we were starting Rasa, and Bill was an advisor to the Rasa team. And we talked a lot about how at the higher tiers, you'd also sometimes package in certain features that were mandatory or really highly desired at bigger enterprises like SSO or provisioning capabilities or certain types of document retention or those kinds of things that really appeal to people that were focused on governance or security or purchasing, et cetera. They didn't really affect the end users that much. But they provide enterprise level value. There's value at the org level, even though the individual wouldn't necessarily discern the difference. Can you talk a little bit about that?
First off, Amit, I'm so happy you remembered that. That is like my advanced pricing and packaging course, and you just got an A on it. So well done there. So this is, I love geeking out on this stuff. And I would say this is a really advanced level pricing and packaging strategy, which is there's two ways to get people to upgrade. I talked about one, which is the threshold model, right? So you basically have at a user feature level, you want all the features that your users can access at any level. But you'll put on a couple of them, you put thresholds, right? You can only use it X amount of times per month, per year, whatever it is. The other strategy that works incredibly well is to put the enterprise requirements for those highest tiers that you have. And you mentioned them, provisioning, deprovisioning, SSO, compliance exports, legal, consolidated billing, dedicated customer success manager, 99.999% SLA uptime, stuff that just like enterprises have to have, right? Like if you're a Slack user, and something happens and you leave the company, you don't want that person to still have access to Slack, right? That's like all your company stuff. Like that's a huge legal compliance risk. An enterprise has to have that. Now, is that a feature that a user using Slack, has? No, they're not. But what that means is now you've reduced the friction, so a ton of more people can start using that service there. So I always think that's like a really great way. And again, that fits in with that PLG model of like you're getting your product into much more people's hands. So you're increasing your awareness, it's subsidized marketing, and you're still creating these natural upgrade drivers, but it allows for more seed and grow. It allows for you to get like little pockets of usage in these large enterprises. It's a great strategy. I don't see as many people using it, but really powerful for the ones that embrace it.
So, Bill, I think you'll like this. Not only did I remember what you taught us at Rasa in those early days, but we actually wrote about you, not specifically by name, but we wrote about that strategy in chapter 6 of the book that we introduced on AI for Association.
Awesome.
And
I love it.
There is this exact concept of going upstream with, basically it's asymmetrical, type of model in terms of value relative to cost. And the value creation is massive. Sometimes it's mandatory by, Sarbanes-Oxley or something. Sometimes it's something different.
Yeah.
In the association market, I wanted to contextualize this for a minute with an idea from that chapter of the book and get your 2 cents and try to translate a little bit of the SaaS world that you described for our listeners. So value creation in the context of associations. Let's take, for example, an association of teachers. So the Association of Teachers delivers education to the teachers. Maybe they have like a lot of templates and lesson plans and, content that the teachers can use to do their job and do a better job as educators, which is awesome. And so they have a membership, and there's a high degree of price sensitivity amongst their audience. They definitely aren't going to see significant change in that over time. And sometimes, by the way, in these associations, membership structure, both in terms of levels, if there are any, and price, are controlled by extremely strict governance structure, like even in the bylaws of the organization, where they cannot change a lot of this stuff. It almost takes an act of God for them to be able to change that kind of stuff. We kid, but it's really close to the truth. But the idea might be to have some premium product beyond membership, right? That might encapsulate some of these higher end things. And coming back to the teacher example, so there's actually some teacher associations in our ecosystem that are rolling out AI bots, which are much like ChatGPT, where they will load all of their proprietary content into that AI, and the AI will be then of service to the teachers. So the teacher might go to the AI and say, hey, give me a lesson plan for this particular topic, which of course you can do in ChatGPT, but that's based on the world's content and not on the association's expert level content. So there's significant value there. And so they're packaging that as a member benefit, which of course is awesome for members. It's an extra thing people were not expecting previously of the association. Now, it's a good reason to stay there. It's a good reason to join. Now, if I am the school district and I look at that and I say, that's awesome, but my school district has certain standards. My school district requires that all of the lesson plans be accessible. All of the lesson plans take into account multilinguality. All of the lesson plans take into account certain other standards that might be legal standards or just professional standards that my school district has in place. And I have my own content that I want to make sure is woven into the bot's thinking and the recommendations and the crafting of the lesson plans. That would be kind of like, the corporate standards, the corporate governance, right? And so the thought process we had was, well, what if there was a radically higher premium level of service from this bot, from the Teachers Association, that could incorporate that school district level or even school level content, and it overrode essentially, if there was conflict, the Teachers Association's base content. And then now the school district says, yeah, now we're good because we know that our content will prevail in the event of a conflict between our standards and the state level standards. And, our thesis was essentially that's dramatically greater value and therefore potentially, 10x, 20x, 50x, whatever the number is, increase in value and therefore revenue opportunity. What's your reaction? I think there's a little bit of a parallel to that between, how Slack would sell something that had an enterprise-grade feature. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I think that's at the end of the day, you're distilling it down to the core elements, right? Like, hey, is there pain? Teachers need lesson plans. Yes. Is there also pain at the district level, right? Like, hey, we want our teachers to be, putting together these lessons plans in a way that is accessible and is compliant and has everything else, so they have pain points, right? And you're using more localized LLMs that have been trained on your best practices, your data, your compliance to achieve that. So I think that's hugely valuable. And wherever there's value, there's opportunity, right, to monetize that and to price it and to help people out. So, yeah, and I think that's like such a cool thing with AI now is there's so many of these use cases that are coming out that in the past you couldn't do, right? You couldn't just be like, hey, I'm going to translate all my lesson plans into 28 different languages, right? But now you can do that in 5 seconds, right? And so I think there's incredible amounts of value. I know it's scary. I know a lot of people listening to this, including myself, sometimes like, wow, AI, this is scary stuff, right? Like what's going to happen? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for job? What does it mean for, this industry? But there's so many use cases that are coming out and a lot of them are really good and valuable. And I think just, keeping your ears open and being inspired by cross industries and how they're using it and think about how you can use it for your particular space is very powerful.
Well, I think that's a really good segue. I had to ask you, Bill, what are your top marketing use cases? You personally, maybe top 3.
Yeah, right now I am knee deep. I am creating my own YouTube channel. It'll be called SaaSimo Pro. Might be out by the time this comes out here. And so I'm creating just a lot of content myself. And as we had shown earlier, I've got some different video angles here for the studio, which is a little bit crazy. But a lot of what I use is, hey, going through that process. So choosing that name, SaaSimo Pro, I looked through a lot of AI that helped me out here. Choosing the topics that I talk about, I use AI to help me out there. The editing process, I use AI there. It's unlimited. The thumbnail titles, that I come up with. There's so many potential use cases. And for me, those are the ones. I also just found myself, I'm using AI a lot more now, like as opposed to just going to Google and searching. And I know they're embedding Gemini and into the results now, but I'm going more to just pure play AI tools and asking those questions, right? It's fun. So I have my channel, SaaSimo Pro. We have a sloth. That's our mascot. I love sloths. They're so cute and they move so slow. And it's probably the antithesis to modern marketing and efficiency and productivity, but I just love them. They're awesome. Well, like as we're making these videos, I want to have like fun things that a sloth would say. And so I like the LOL cat style of talking. It's when they're like, it's like when a cat, you'll sometimes see it in memes when they're like, what's that? And they use like Z's and other ones. And it's a hard style to speak in. And I'm not that good at it. So a lot of times I'll just go to like ChatGPT and be like, hey, what would a sloth say in a cute LOL cat like style of speaking? And it will like come up with 5 different variations of that, right? And then, I'll put those into my videos. So I just think like it's one of those things that is just so powerful. And I think we're all there. We're all starting off slow. And we're like, how do we use this? And you're trying, you're tinkering, and then you hear someone else that uses it in a really cool way, either professionally or personally. But for me, those are some of the use cases that are at least top of mind for me right now.
Bill, if you're talking to someone who hasn't used AI much and is overwhelmed by it, what's your advice for them to help them get rolling?
I think, use services like yourself, download, like I listen to a lot of podcasts because I take a lot of walks. And so I like downloading podcasts, people just talking about it, and just start trying it. I mean, I'm always say like, hey, really easy one if you haven't used, and that's fine. Like we've all essentially hadn't used it at all. And then we all started, at some point we have to start. So what I would say is like, hey, the next time you're going to go to Google to just put something in, go to like ChatGPT and ask the same question. Right. And just start seeing what it comes up with. The other thing I've started like really trying to press myself on is, hey, during my daily life, for all the stuff I do for my professional, work type stuff, I'm really trying to ask myself, where could I eliminate some of this? So in other words, like right now, like I'm putting here these videos, I have a lot of different camera angles and I'm working with outside video editors, but there's already AI tools that can start taking a long video and chop up, 5 or 6 great little minis from it, right? That's awesome. Now they haven't figured out yet for multi-camera, but at some point they will, right? And so I think it's really interesting to just kind of ask yourself, hey, where do I spend the most time on? Right. Like I remember one task, I was going through all these videos and I was like, had to delete one camera angle that didn't work, go back and forth, go back. And it took me like an hour. Right. And it was a very repetitive task. And I know at some point, like an AI companion or co-pilot or agent could have just watched me and said, oh, I can do that for you. Right. So, I'd say start small. Listen to some stuff. It's intimidating at first, but the more you dip your toes in, it's really not that bad. It's like going into a pool, like, oh my God, the water's cold, I can't go in. Then you're okay, you get in, oh, I'm swimming, this is great, right? It's not that big of a deal.
Have you tried out the tool Munch, Bill? Or
no,
Clips?
I don't think so. What is this?
Well, those are
Opus Clips I have, yes. Munch I haven't.
Munch is, I think, similar to Opus Clips. Actually, yesterday in our Intro to AI webinar, or Tuesday of this week, someone asked if they were similar, and I haven't used both. We typically opt for Munch just because, honestly, I think that was the first few ads I'd ever seen. So I said I'll go with Munch. But we take this podcast, this very episode, we'll drop into Munch. We'll generate some clips that we share on social. We also use the transcript for blog ideas and social posts. And I don't know if you've heard of the term content turkey. Have you ever heard that before?
I don't know. I haven't. I'm learning stuff on this one. I love it. Go for it.
I know. So the first time I heard this was actually from Erica, who's the COO of Rasa. who you might know, who you probably know, but
Yeah.
she on a panel said that a content turkey is inspired from the idea of a Thanksgiving turkey. And you know how the next day you take the leftover turkey and you make
Sure.
all these variations of meals with it. So basically, the podcast is our content turkey, and then we produce all this other content from it
I
using
love it.
AI. So
That's
I thought
great.
I'd share that with listeners. It's a fun one.
That's a fantastic one. That's so cool.
Well, I'm curious. We talked about AI use cases. How do you see marketing evolving kind of in this greater AI landscape over the next, well, I'd say year, but it's hard to look out that far. Maybe the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah, it's amazing because I can't think of a certain area of marketing that won't be transformed by AI, and I'm thinking of all these different disciplines. So like if you're in demand gen, if you're out doing a lot of programmatic buying, obviously having an AI tool that can go in there and make these decisions proactively, whatever your core metric is, return on ad spend, return investment, click through, whatever it is, right? Like I could see that just being an incredible, companion to help you out with. If you're in content creation, we talked a lot about that. Like it's just so easy and frictionless to create content now, or it's much easier than it has been in the past, right? I think of like, compliance with editorial tone and from a copywriting perspective, like when we were at Salesforce, we had a very, in the marketing team, we were like, this is how we want our tone to be. But, you have like 10,000 people in the company, they're writing everywhere, right? But now you could go, hey, go through all of the content that's accessible and rewrite it in our tone. Like, that's amazing. That's hugely powerful, right? I think from a visual perspective, Midjourney, Sora, some of these tools that are coming out, just so powerful, right? A lot of the visuals I use for my, my YouTube channel are coming from AI. It's hard. It's one of those, like, I can't think of an area. And so, I mean, the best way I thought of it is, I know a lot of people are worried about like, what's it mean for my job or this or that, or am I going to lose my job? Is I don't think like anyone that I think it's going to break down to two people, right? The people that embrace AI and go, hey, how can I use this in my job and be more efficient and productive? They're the ones that are going to stay, get promoted, get like better career path. The ones that are like, oh, I'm not listening to AI, I don't care, like whatever, it's a fad, it's going to go away. Those are the ones I'd be really nervous about, right? Because I just think, I can think of 1,000 use cases in marketing. And the problem is, I think people that start to learn about AI, no matter what field you're in, problem or opportunity, right? They can also think of all the use cases of how to use it. So it's going to be a crazy couple of years, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a wizard wand and can predict the future, but I do know like these tools are very, very helpful.
Well, people ask me when I speak on AI all the time, what's going to happen to their jobs? And, my answer is very simple, is that you as an individual are very unlikely to be replaced by AI itself, but you are very likely to be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI really well.
There you go. Yeah.
And I think it's just what it is. It's kind of like, you know how to use a computer, and it's just part of life. And we may likely hate it, but it's our reality.
And I think the good news is anyone that's listening to this, like you've taken the first step, right? Like you're listening to this, like you're being exposed. It's becoming less formidable for you. It's like less of a, abstract concept that you've never actually used. So, you're absolutely taking the right step.
Many of the fears that I hear also are from people who haven't yet taken that step. And that's usually my answer as well, is get started, start learning it. And you will quickly find that it is, first of all, it's not insurmountable. And many of the fears are misplaced. There are some very strong and legitimate fears with AI, kind of a macro scale in terms of what happens in society, what happens if there's bad AI or bad actors with AI, all those big questions. But as an individual in a professional role, it's pretty much what you just said. So.
Yeah, I'm an optimist at heart, and I try to be a historian at heart. And I think most technology usually a lot of times gets demonized right when it comes out. And you hear some of the stories of like when the first automobile came out and they forced it, like they had laws where you couldn't go faster than a horse, or, you had to take breaks. All these crazy, weird things of like, how the automobile was going to be the death of society. And so I like to hope that, hey, I think this will be, consistent where, hey, it'll be a powerful technology that will transform humanity, mostly in a good way, potentially some bad things with any technology, but it's going to be change agents, and just be aware of it and stay on top of it. And I think you're going to do great.
There probably was a horse breeders association behind that law about cars not going faster than horses. Lobby Congress. In fact, Mallory, we should use ChatGPT to research that and see if we can dig out.
It probably is. Someone's doing it in real time right now. They're typing it in. There's a great use case example.
They should have used a freemium model. That's what we'll tell them. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for bringing these SaaS lessons to the association space. Where can listeners find more about you? You mentioned this YouTube channel. Can you give us any helpful links?
SaaS CMO Pro. That's the one. You can find me on all social channels. Like I said, you probably, by the time this goes out, you might be getting the first bits of content that'll be coming out there, but SaaS CMO Pro. The other way is, if you just want to reach out to me individually, my name is Bill Macaitis. You can reach me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Bill.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I had a really fun conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to Sidecar Sync this week. Looking to dive deeper? Download your free copy of our new book, Ascend, Unlocking the Power of AI for Associations at ascendbook.org. It's packed with insights to power your association's journey with AI. And remember, Sidecar is here with more resources from webinars to boot camps to help you stay ahead in the association world. We'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep disrupting.